It's a full offseason outlook. Who should the Dallas Stars prioritize re-signing or let walk away? What do they absolutely need to stay away from? And a 2024 NHL Draft outlook.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. On today's episode of Locked On Stars, we're doing a full off-season outlook for the Dallas Stars. Who should they re-sign or make the tough decision to let walk away? What are some things they need to stay away from in the offseason, as well as a NHL Draft outlook, which is right around the corner in the next couple of weeks. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for your support this season. I know it ended in a very disappointing way, but this is where the fun comes in now. We get to talk about free agency a bit, who the Stars should re-sign, who should they let walk away, and all the fun GM stuff that we all get to play now in the next couple of months as we approach next season. So we'll jump right into things today, and we can play a little game. Who should the Stars re-sign or let walk away? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So here's a bit of an off-season preview. I'll lay the groundwork for you. And this comes via cap-friendly roster 13. You got 9 forwards, 3 defensemen, 1 goalie. Cap hit $71.7 million. Cap space is $15.9 million. And of course, that comes with some notable RFAs and notable UFA. So the restricted free agents for the Dallas Stars: Ty Dellandrea, Sam Steele, Thomas Harley, and Nils Lundkvist. I think we'll have an interesting discussion about Nils Lundkvist today. The notable unrestricted free agents, notable, not noticeable. Anyways, Matt Duchene, of course, Joe Pavelski, who says he's going to hang it up, Craig Smith, Yanni Hakanpää, Pouliot, Chris Tanev, and Scott Wedgwood. So there is the base heading into this off season. And I'll go ahead and go through each one of them and share some of my thoughts on if the Stars should re-sign them or let them walk away and all that good stuff. The first player I will start with, and I think the most important, is going to be Chris Tanev. Look, he's 34 years of age, but we know what type of player he is. He still has a lot in the tank, I believe, and it was no question that he made the Dallas Stars decor a lot better when he arrived at the end of February, when he was acquired from Calgary. Also, he's not requiring surgery in his ankle. If you missed out on his closing presser, he mentioned that he felt something pop, thought it was his Achilles, but turned out it was a few tendons and it will not require surgery, and he should be good to go for next season. I think General Manager Jim Nill has to prioritize signing Chris Tanev and Thomas Harley. I think those are the first 2 decisions you try to make if you're Jim Nill. You have to restore this decor to at least a shell of what it could be, and you're going to have to fill in some spots from there. It's definitely not going to be pretty, but Tanev is going to be coveted from anybody that's looking for a defenseman, let alone a right-shot defenseman, and that's what he is. Dallas needs right-shot defensemen like they need a shot in the arm, right? They don't have a ton already on their roster, and I think Tanev, if you can get him for a right number, would be an excellent re-signing, and you have to like where your decor is headed into next October. There are some projections for Tanev if he does stay with Dallas. And this comes from AFP Analytics. And they have Chris Tanev at a 3-year times $4 million, just under 4.5 a year for Tanev to stay with the Dallas Stars. And that would be a team-friendly deal. He can probably test the open market, and I'm sure he'll have plenty of suitors. He had plenty of suitors at the trade deadline, and I'm sure he's going to be a hot topic of conversation. But I would love for Chris Tanev to return. I think they need to prioritize getting him, and then your other defenseman, Thomas Harley. And Harley will be interesting because do you want to sign a bridge deal to keep him around for a little less money, or do you want to go ahead and sign him long term? And this is where you get into some of the cap constraints, and are they going to be able to do that? Dallas does have $15 million and some change to work with. The cap is going up for the first time significantly in the last decade, so they may have some room there, but you have to keep Harley around, obviously. I know he didn't have a great postseason run, but he's just 22 years old, and I think he can be an elite defenseman in the National Hockey League, and I think the ceiling is really, really high for someone like Harley. AFP Analytics has Harley a long-term deal projected at 7 by 6.8. If he did a short-term deal, it would be 2 by 4. I think I'm of the belief that you get Harley for a short-term deal, somewhat of a bridge deal like Robertson had signed a few years ago, as well as Jake Ottinger, because Jake Ottinger is going to be off the books after next year. So you're going to have to pay him, and he's going to need a significant raise of some sort as well if you want to keep him around. He is a restricted free agent, which is a good sign. I think if you can get Harley for a few years, somewhere in that $4 million range, obviously you're not going to pay him close to Miro, obviously, who's on the hook for till 2029-30. But if you get Harley and Chris Tanev re-sign, then you have to like where you're at that point. You got Miro, you got Harley, you have Tanev and Lindell, and then you have Ryan Suter as another left shot defenseman. They have to find a way to fill in some needs with right shot defensemen, and maybe they can address that in free agency. I'm really going to do some deep dives on free agents specifically on Fridays. We'll do Free Agent Friday. If there's anybody you want me to break down or specifically look into, please let me know in the comment section below, and we'll do some deep dives on these players. I think there's a lot of really, really intriguing guys that Dallas should be interested in, as forwards too, and defensemen. I think there's a lot of ways for Dallas to make this roster better. I think the roster is in great shape, obviously. They've done a wonderful job of constructing this to a point where the window is pretty wide open. They have to now fill in some holes, and I think they need to do that with some size. Tanev brings you some size, and that's why I really, really like re-signing him, and then along with Harley. I think those are your two most important off-season issues. They're not really issues, but things you have to address. I would prioritize those two, getting Harley and Tanev back. You look at other restricted free agents, Dellandrea, Steele, and Lundqvist. Look, Dellandrea is a great bottom six forward. He's still young. You can get him at a good number. I'm not opposed to bringing him back, as well as Sam Steele. I thought Steele gave you a lot this year. He's 26. He's also a restricted free agent. And if you bring Steele and Dellandrea back, then that makes up most of your fourth line with the addition of Radek Faksa. I think you let Craig Smith walk away. Obviously, Joe Pavelski, unless it's going to be some inordinate enormous team-friendly deal, but it looks like he's going to hang it up as well. Nils Lundkvist, the last restricted free agent I'll get to here in this segment, very, very interesting. And I've obviously talked about him ad nauseum, especially in the last 3 months of the season, because I've almost had trouble wrapping my arms around Nils. I'm almost talking myself into him being an NHL ready player, or I was talking myself into him or into believing that he was ready for postseason hockey. And it obviously wasn't the case. You gave up a first round pick for him. I don't know if you want to give up on him just quite yet. He's just 23 years old. He still has a lot of room for improvement. He's just played over a full season worth of games in the National Hockey League now. Can he make another stride? Can he make another jump in the offseason? Do you want to bet on that? You can obviously get him for a decent number, and he's also a right shot defenseman. Look, he doesn't fit into the narrative of being a bigger, more physical player. Obviously, he's undersized, and Dallas has enough undersized, offensively gifted defensemen with Harley and Heiskanen, but you can really never have enough. And if he lives as your sixth defenseman or he's a healthy scratch most nights, then he lives there. I think he's a very suitable seventh defenseman. And hopefully Liam Bichsel can make the jump up to the National Hockey League this season, and then you're not as worried about it. That's the nice thing about Liam Bichsel waiting in the weeds, so to speak. But he's also a left shot defenseman. So you don't quite get Miro back on his strong side, which we've seen him play for his entire career. Can we find a way to get Miro on his left side? And maybe that has to come from free agency, because right now you don't have a ton of great options at your disposal. And if you want to stick with Miro and Harley as your top pairing, then obviously one of them is going to have to play on their weak side. Other free agents, Matt Duchene. And this one is maybe a more polarizing figure than any of the others upcoming in the offseason. I'm of the belief right now, I think you let Matt Duchene walk away. And he was a wonderful, wonderful addition this season. And you have to give him credit for the elevation of Tyler Seguin and his great season, as well as Mason Marchment. But if you can't keep him for a team-friendly deal, which I know he signed here in Dallas to begin with, it doesn't make much sense to me. And even if it was a team-friendly deal, you're going to make up for it with having a full year of Maverick Bourque and a full season of Logan Stankoven. I think the benefits of those two younger guys outweigh the benefits of Matt Duchene at this point in his career. And he was great in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you're going to get a lot more out of Maverick Bourque and Logan Stankoven at this point in their careers. They're cheaper, number one. They're cheaper, and I think you're going to make up for a Matt Duchene easily. And he's obviously a fan favorite, I think, and he's great in the locker room, and he went through a tough time of being bought out by Nashville, and he found a home here, and I think it all worked out for the better of both sides. But Matt Duchene is someone I'm comfortable with letting walk away. He can try it somewhere else. Give the young guys their shot to sort of take over, because you got Jamie Benn on the hook for one more year. Seguin obviously is going to be here for at least another 3 years. You have this influx of young talent like, let's see it. Let's put it into action with Bixel and Bork in a full year of Stankoven. Bork and Stankoven are ready. They look the part. I know Bork only played in Game 6 against Edmonton, but it wasn't like he was out to lunch. He's ready. And I think you have to like the structure if you're able to re-sign Tanev, Harley, even Niels Lundqvist. You keep Steele and Delandry around. That's 2/3 of your fourth line. And then you can fill in your bottom six with some heavy forwards in free agency. Maybe find a right shot defenseman on the market at a decent price as well to fill in a gap. Otherwise, you kind of rock along with what you had this year with Lean Bixel. And I think that's an upgrade. So those are interesting decisions, and I think General Manager Jim Nill is going to have his work cut out for him here this offseason, because you can go a lot of different ways, I think. And I guess you're really concerned about Dallas really, really regressing, but I think they're in a spot right now where they can be just as good as next year if they make the right moves, they prioritize the right guys, and make some great offseason acquisitions. And it doesn't need to be a splash. You look at last year, they got Smith and they got Steele and Duchesne. It wasn't necessarily these big splash moves, but they were necessary. And Steele, Smith, and Duchesne all had very, very valuable impacts for you this season. It just needs to be the right fit. It's not always the flashy player, and I know Tanev was sort of the flashy deadline deal, but he was worth every penny. So if I was the GM of the Stars, I'm prioritizing Harley and Tanev first. If you're unable to re-sign guys like Delandry or Steele, which I don't think they're going to have an issue, you can fill those. You can fill players like that in free agency. There are role players out there that the Stars can fill those voids. You can't necessarily fill in for the loss of Chris Tanev or Thomas Harley with his projections. So a lot of interesting cases I think the Stars will have to deal with. Also, I'd be remiss not to mention Scott Wedgwood. You bring him back for another year. I know he's signed some 1-year deals here recently, but at 31 years old, he's a great backup for Jake Ottinger. Their relationship is great. You give him whatever you need to some degree to keep him around, and there's your backup netminder, because Dallas frankly doesn't have a ton of great depth in their organization. I know Murray's come up and Poirier, but they haven't shown at this point that they're ready to make the jump up. But you have your number one in Ottinger, and Wedgwood is a great backup. So you definitely keep him around as well. So there's a little re-sign or walk away with notable restricted free agents and unrestricted free agents for the Dallas Stars upcoming here in the off season. Really, really excited to see how it plays out in the future as well with Dallas and some of their young guys that hopefully will be making huge impacts for you in just a few months when the games start to roll around once again. Okay, I spoke to some concerns already. So what does Dallas need to absolutely stay away from this offseason? We'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. The NBA Finals starts in just a couple of days. The Dallas Mavericks taking on the Boston Celtics. Make some money this postseason. Make some parlays while watching the Mavs hopefully take down the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. So make some money this postseason. As I mentioned, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So download the FanDuel app It's free on your smartphone. It takes 30 seconds. It's free and available on Google Play. It's also available on the App Store. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So what would be the worst case disaster this offseason for the Dallas Stars? Who do they need to stay away from, or what do they need to stay away from in this offseason to make sure they don't backtrack what they've been able to build here in the last few seasons? And that's a true Stanley Cup contender. They've made it to the Final Four the past 2 years. And they've put together a well-constructed roster, but they need something that gets them over the hump. And obviously, they don't want to regress heading into next season. So I guess the obvious outlook in terms of what could be a disaster is overpaying for someone like a Matt Duchene or even Chris Tanev. But I don't think that is going to be the case, especially with the track record that Jim Nill has had here recently. I think in terms of finding great players for good value, that's not much of a problem when it comes to this front office. But I will say there's one thing that I think Dallas really needs to stay away from in this offseason. And I alluded to this in yesterday's episode as well, and a little bit today. Dallas needs to get some snarl in their game. And I know some of you every day this season have commented, where's the physical play? They need to be more physical. They are not physical enough. And I've never been one to subscribe to that sort of style. But you look at the teams that make it to the Final Four every year or making it to Stanley Cup finals, they all are heavy on the back end and up front. You look at Vegas last year, they were big in their bottom six, just big guys like Amadio, Colasar. The back end, my goodness, with Haig and White Cloud and Pietrangelo, like big, heavy guys. Edmonton, for that matter. Not that their big guys are necessarily fantastic players, but CC takes up space. Darnell Nurse is a big guy. Ekholm is huge. Like, they just have size, and that is something Dallas really lacks. And now some of you are saying, wow, now you think you're a genius for coming up with this. But look, I've turned a corner. Dallas needs to stay away from your Max Domis, Victor Arvidssons, who I know are great players and they have high motors, but they're undersized, and you already have those sort of attributes and characteristics in your roster currently with Stankoven and Johnston, and then Bork's going to make his contributions. You have these really young, talented core players that you're hoping can carry you for years for the next decade. Now it's about filling in the spots around them to allow them to be successful. One of the only players that was truly imposing his will physically throughout the postseason was Jamie Benn. There's not really one I can point back to. All the big hits were from Jamie Benn. And I know Robertson had some displays of physical dominance in small patches. But look, that's not his game. And then that's frankly not what we're paying Jason Robertson to do. It's nice to see that. And you want some of your highly skilled guys to do that. As Daryl Ray says, sometimes you need your singers to be dancers and your dancers to be singers at certain times out of the year. But it's players like Jonathan Marchessault who are a bit undersized, and I know they would be excellent additions to the offense. Max Domi is another one. Like, look, great playmakers, great players overall, but I think those are not the right moves for Dallas if they're looking to get over the hump they have those players, and they've had them for the last few years. And if there's a knock you can have on Pete DeBoer, is his team's not the most physical. You look at the fourth lines that Dallas is trotting out there with Faksa, Smith, and Steele. It's not like a checking line. It's looking for offense. Like DeBoer wants all four lines to produce, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if they're not going to produce, they need to be effective. And that's something that really, really hampered them against Edmonton. They weren't even effective. On top of not contributing, they just weren't effective. And that is something Dallas has to find a way. And I think Pete DeBoer, to some degree, has to embrace some size and physicality within this roster to get them over the hump. You look at Florida, man, just nasty guys, like nasty. And Kachuk, hard to play against. Sam Bennett, one of the hardest guys to play against. Barkov is a hard player to play against, and he's not overtly physical, but a great two-way forward. On their back end, you have Ekblad, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Forsling, like big guys that defend and are hard to play against. Then New York, on the other hand, big guys like Trouba. Say what you want about him, but a big guy. Keandre Miller. Like they have those guys that can impose their will physically. I think Dallas needs to embrace some of that because they got the skill. They have the skill and the talent, obviously, that can carry them. But when you get to the Western Conference Finals, when you get to a Stanley Cup final and you've played over 100 games and you're playing every other day, you need some big boys to just withstand that physical toll that it takes. Because look, as much as I love Roope Hintz, he's due to miss at least three playoff games a year. Or he's due to be playing through an injury of some kind. It's happened every single season. You need guys that can withstand some of that and also take some pressure off those players physically. So I think that's my number one concern and what could really throw things off the rails. If Dallas really embraces players like Marchessault and Domi and some more basically skill guys, right? Like the Mitch Marners of the world. And it's not that it wouldn't work, because it would work. It's not that it wouldn't be a fit. I just don't think that is going to be the X factor. That's not what gets them over the hump, because we were hoping Matt Duchene was going to be the X factor this year. I talked about it in the first month of the season. Wow. Maybe he was the missing piece this whole time. And that came out to not be that obviously was not the case. So there you go. Man, we could talk about this for hours. Offseason Outlook. So it gets fun. We can play fantasy GM to some degree. Alrighty, let's take a short little preview at the 2024 NHL Draft for the Dallas Stars, some of their draft needs. As the weeks start to pick up and we get closer, I'm hoping to get some guests on and really just nail down on some prospects the Stars should be looking at. I'm still in the process of taking a good hard look of who the Stars are interested in. And some players that will be in their range. It's an interesting draft in a lot of ways. And we'll touch on that on the other side in just a moment. So this draft is shaping up to be really, really interesting. And I've read a ton of articles on the Athletic and just really from anywhere about this NHL draft. And there really isn't a consensus top 10 in a lot of ways. Like Macklin Celebrini is obviously going number one. that he is the consensus top pick. And obviously for good reason. He tore it up at Boston this offseason, but after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. In a lot of ways, the draft is a crapshoot every single year. It's just a lot different than other sports, right? And you don't get guys that come in and automatically make an impact. Sometimes it's 3-4 years down the road. A lot of it is like baseball. You're drafting these young kids and you're hoping in a few years they can make an impact on your roster. For the Dallas Stars specifically, upcoming in this 2024 draft, they don't have a plethora of picks. They just have 3 picks in this year's draft. They have 1 first-round pick, they have 1 fifth-round pick, and they have 1 7th-round pick. And of course, that's to trading some of them away for Tanev, Nemestikov a few years ago, Domi as well. So they don't have picks in rounds 2 through 4. They're slotted to pick at 29th in this upcoming draft. I'll say this: they need to find right shot defensemen. They have to like where their farm system is in a lot of ways. They have some really high end talent that should be making an impact at the NHL level soon. But they could use some forwards with some size. I think they're going to stay away from left shot defensemen. They need right shot defensemen so bad. They need to find a way to replenish the farm system, and that they need some defensemen. And a few years ago, that was all they drafted. I want to say like 6 picks in a row was all defensemen. So they'll be looking to try to replenish the farm system. And that way, you got guys like Christian Kyrou, who's just 20 years old, and he's a bit more of an undersized defenseman. Gavin White is another interesting prospect down in Texas, and is a right shot defenseman that is continuing to develop. So there are a lot of different ways that Dallas could go about this. I think their main priorities are going to be right shot defensemen. And I think they're going to start looking for some size. Each draft sometimes has a theme, right? And maybe we're going to see Dallas go with the theme. We're going to take some guys with some big size that project well. And maybe that's a philosophy they take in. And they've been a really, obviously there's a lot to be said about 2021 and 2017. And they've done an excellent job of drafting very impactful players here in recent years, but there was a stretch where they weren't so good at it. And a lot of it is just throwing darts at a dartboard. I get that. It's really hard to be exact. It's not an exact science. And frankly, when you're in the position that Dallas is, it's hard to find a star player or someone that's going to have an impact like Wyatt Johnston in, 2 to 3 years, right? That's really hard because you look at the history. If you want to get a generational talent, you have to tank. You have to lose a lot of hockey games. And Dallas hasn't necessarily did that even when they were in their down years in the mid 2010s, right? Like coming just early 2010s, and they were bad. They weren't like technically lottery, like top 3 picks consistently. And you look at teams like Colorado, they tank forever. They get McKinnon, boom, they win a cup. That's what it takes sometimes to lose, and Dallas hasn't necessarily done that. So it's hard to find value, but they've done a fantastic job of it. They find guys like Robertson, and Johnston, like that, but that's what it takes. So the scouting department is worth their weight in gold. So really intrigued to see what kind of shape and theme this draft takes up this year. I'm hoping to get a lot of guests on, talk a bit more in depth about the draft and specific prospects that Dallas may be interested in or are going to have their eyes on in that specific range from 25 to 35. But draft is always intriguing, of course, and trying to project where guys can be in years and years to come. So a lot of fun. And I think this offseason is going to be great just because Dallas is in such a great spot that it'll be interesting to see what moves they're making. And they got some important decisions. So we'd love to hear your take on it too as well. Please go in the comment section. Let me know who you would re-sign, maybe who you should who would you let walk away. I know some of you are on board for letting Dutchy walk away as well. So let me know what your priorities would be if you're the GM of the Dallas Stars. Who should they prioritize re-signing to make sure the ship stays afloat, or at least to the same level that we've seen it here in the past few seasons? Alrighty, that'll do it for a full off-season outlook of the Dallas Stars. Draft in just a couple of weeks. Of course, Stanley Cup final, which I'm sorry to mention. I know it hurts. It's starting up here on Saturday. And we'll have some fun this offseason, of course. What's fun, get some great special guests on, and just chat away pretty much every single day about this Dallas Stars squad. Plenty of juicy stuff to get into, that is for sure. Again, please let me know if there's any guests you want me to reach out to, if possible. If there's someone that's not really on my radar, I'd love to reach out and just see if we can get on. We'll do some crossover episodes with maybe Seth from Locked On Wild and all that good stuff. And we'll just talk about the NHL, man, and chat it up. So this is what this time of year is for, of course. So, alrighty, enjoy your Wednesday. Hopefully the rain holds off, man. Gosh, it's been raining every day. It's been insane. And hopefully enjoy the weather. Get outside, soak in that vitamin D. It's summer, baby. Let's enjoy it. I know it's scorching. That is for sure. But have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. So long, Stars fans.